All right, let's dive in. We're tackling Intel's Q3 2024 earnings call today.
Oh, yeah, you weren't kidding when you said we had a lot of material, investor presentation, analyst reports, even a couple of opinion pieces.
Someone's got to make sense of it all.
Right. And the big question on everyone's mind, I think, is can Intel really get back on top? King of Silicon, round two.
Well, that's what we're here to find out.
They're definitely fighting for it. That much is clear. This earnings call gives us a peek behind the curtain, their battle plan. And it's a mix of, well, some pretty bold moves and some tough choices.
Speaking of bold moves, let's start with the numbers, right? They brought in 13.3 billion in revenue, beat their own guidance even.
Yeah, not bad at all. Especially when you remember how they described this quarter, a fight for every inch.
Yeah, I remember that. One of the articles compared it to crossing the finish line with a boulder on your back.
Oh, yeah, that one. Pretty vivid image, right?
Hmm.
But the main takeaway here is they're exceeding expectations, even with everything going on.
Okay, so that's the good news. But got to talk about the hits too, right? That $3 billion impairment charge definitely raised some eyebrows.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one. Mostly tied to Intel 7 equipment and, well, basically excess capacity.
So what's that telling us? Are they giving up on the older tech, or is it more like shifting gears?
It's a little more complicated than that. They're not abandoning everything, not yet. But this charge definitely signals a change in focus.
I see. So streamlining things, making space for what's next.
Exactly. And making room for the next generation of chips, like 18A, which we'll get to.
Speaking of streamlining, those cost-cutting measures, they were pretty drastic, weren't they? 15% workforce reduction, that's got to have some serious ripple effects.
Oh, it's huge. And while they're framing it as a way to boost efficiency, yeah, you got to wonder about the long-term impact, right?
Like, what about morale? Could that end up hurting innovation down the line?
Possibly, yeah. It's definitely a valid concern.
But hey, maybe these cuts are what they need to free up resources, for all those big bets they're making, like 18A, their next-gen chip.
Oh, absolutely. 18A is absolutely crucial to their comeback. They're talking big efficiency gains, performance boosts, thanks to EUV technology.
Okay, EUV, that's a new one for me.
So basically, EUV lets them etch those tiny transistors with extreme precision. More powerful, more energy-efficient chips.
Sounds pretty revolutionary. But I'm guessing it doesn't come cheap.
You guessed right. Startup costs for 18A are significant, and those costs are going to hit their margins, at least in the short term.
Makes sense. So they're playing the long game here, taking a hit now to be a leader later.
Exactly. They're willing to sacrifice a bit now for a stronger position in the future. It's a calculated risk, especially with the competition breathing down their necks, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And speaking of calculated risks, they've got this new AI-optimized processor, Lunar Lake. They're calling it, get this, a one-off experiment. It's pretty different from their usual approach.
Oh, yeah, Lunar Lake. That was a bit of a head-scratcher.
So what makes Lunar Lake so unique? What are they doing differently?
It's all about the design. Lunar Lake integrates memory directly onto the processor package. Now, that's a big deal for performance, especially for AI applications. But it also makes manufacturing more complex.
And probably puts even more pressure on those already thin margins, right?
You got it.
So why go through all that for just one processor?
They're going after a niche market. But it's a growing market, AI PCs. It's definitely a gamble. But if it works, they could grab a big chunk of this emerging market.
So Lunar Lake, it's a swing for the fences. But it's not just about new chips, is it? They're also shaking things up with their portfolio and making some, let's say, interesting partnerships.
They are streamlining their offerings, integrating their edge business into their client computing group, focusing their next generation portfolio on networking and telecommunications.
Okay, so simplifying, getting more focus, what's the thinking behind that?
It's all about maximizing efficiency, making sure their products are aligned with what the market actually needs. Got to stay agile in this ever-changing tech world.
And that brings us to foundry services, right? They're really pushing into contract chip manufacturing, even snagged a $3 billion government contract for that Secure Enclave program.
Yeah, Foundry Services is a big piece of their long-term plan. This move puts them right in the middle of the domestic chip supply chain, which, has become a national security priority.
Makes sense. But what about Mobileye, their self-driving car unit? They're a leader, but are they hitting any bumps in the road?
Well, they're still a major player, but they are facing some headwinds, especially in China. Shipments have dropped quite a bit, with all the geopolitical tensions and rising competition.
So even a leader in a hot market like autonomous driving can't escape global politics, huh? Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, There are a couple of big moves that I think deserve a closer look. These are the ones making headlines.
Oh, for sure. These are the ones that show how Intel's really thinking strategically and may be willing to shake things up a bit.
First up, the Buy86 Ecosystem Advisory Group. Now, this is where things get interesting because Intel's joining forces with, wait for it,
Oh,
AMD.
you're kidding, I know, right? Talk about rivals becoming collaborators.
Right. So instead of fighting, they're teaming up with, well, other big names, Google, Microsoft, Meta, to promote the Buy86 architecture. What's the strategy there? Why the sudden change of heart?
They're facing a common enemy, the rise of ARM-based processors. This alliance, it's a way to make sure the Buy86 architecture stays relevant.
Okay, so it's like a defensive move, protecting their shared turf.
Exactly. And then, of course, we have the expanding partnership with AWS, the cloud computing giant.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. They're developing a custom Xeon chip for AWS, tailored to their cloud needs.
This is a huge win for Intel. It shows they can handle the demands of even the most demanding cloud providers.
And they're not stopping there. They're also working on an AI fabric chip for AWS. This one's built on their advanced 18A node. AI seems to be like a major focus for Intel right now.
It is, and for good reason. AI is changing everything. By partnering with AWS, Intel's putting themselves right at the forefront of this technological revolution.
Smart move,
Yeah.
aligning themselves with the biggest player in the cloud. Okay, so wow, we covered a lot of ground here. Let's take a breather, come back, and we'll dig deeper into these partnerships in part 2, see what they really mean for Intel's future.
Welcome back. It's really something, how Intel's trying to navigate this whole, crazy tech landscape.
Yeah, and those partnerships, especially the one with AMD, and that one really got people talking.
I know, right? I mean, they've been rivals forever, and now, bam, they're working together, promoting the same architecture even.
So what's the game plan here?
Well, you got to look at the big picture. The semiconductor industry, it's going through a major shift, right? ARM-based processors, they're on the rise, especially in mobile and data centers. And that's a direct challenge to the whole Buy86 dominance.
So instead of fighting each other, they're teaming up to fight off a common enemy.
Exactly. The Buy86 Ecosystem Advisory Group, it's all about making sure the Buy86 architecture doesn't just, fade away, pooling their resources, their expertise, driving innovation, holding on to that market share.
Some analysts are saying this collaboration, it could actually stifle competition, limit consumer choice even. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a good point. Definitely something to think about. But I think overall, the benefits outweigh the risks. Working together, Intel and AMD, they can streamline software development, make sure things are compatible across all kinds of devices. And that's good for consumers in the end, right? More seamless experience, things just working together smoothly.
Okay, so they're playing the long game, betting on the staying power of Buy86. Now let's talk about their expanded partnership with AWS. This feels like a big move to get a bigger piece of that cloud computing pie.
Oh, it is. AWS, they're the king of the cloud right now. And this partnership, it gives Intel direct access to all those massive infrastructure needs they have.
And they're developing a custom Xeon chip just for AWS. What makes this chip so special? How's it different from what they usually offer?
This custom Xeon chip, it's made specifically for AWS's cloud infrastructure, optimized for performance, power efficiency, security. It's way beyond what they're selling off the shelf.
So it's not just like slapping an AWS sticker on an existing chip. This is a whole new thing built just for them.
Exactly. Intel's using all that chip design and manufacturing knowledge to create something that fits AWS's needs perfectly. It shows they can really cater to even the most demanding customers.
And they're going even further, working on an AI fabric chip for AWS too. This one's built on their 18A node, that cutting-edge technology we were talking about. AI seems to be a huge priority for Intel right now.
It is, and it makes sense. AI is changing everything, every industry. And cloud computing, that's at the heart of it all. By partnering with AWS, they're putting themselves right in the middle of this AI boom.
But isn't that risky? The AI world is super competitive. Companies like NVIDIA are already, dominating the market.
It's a risk, for sure. But it has the potential for big rewards.
Yep.
Intel's strength is in how well they understand chip architecture, how to make them. They're using that knowledge to make specialized AI chips, ones that can deliver better performance, better efficiency.
So they're hoping to out-innovate the competition.
Exactly. And that partnership with AWS, it's a great way to show off what their AI chips can do, reach a wider audience too.
All right, so we've talked about their financials, the cost-cutting, the push for innovation with 18A and Lunar Lake, and now these partnerships. Intel's clearly trying to, completely change its future, but are they missing any potential problems?
Well, The semiconductor industry, it's famous for being unpredictable, right? Lots of competition. For Intel to succeed, they need to execute perfectly. And they have to keep up with the crazy pace of technology, how fast things change.
So what are the biggest challenges they're facing right now?
Well, the chip shortage, it's still a big problem. Supply chains are messed up, costs are up. Intel's putting a lot of money into making chips in the US, their foundry services thing, but that takes time to really pay off.
So things outside their control. But what about things inside the company? Are there any organizational issues, strategic things that could slow them down?
Yeah, managing this huge shift, it's a big deal. They had layoffs, they're restructuring everything, pushing into new markets, keeping employees happy, keeping that innovative spirit alive. That's going to be key.
So strong leadership, good communication, that's essential right now.
Absolutely. And another challenge is talent, attracting and keeping the best people in such a competitive industry. Intel needs to offer competitive salaries, benefits, opportunities to grow. Otherwise, those talented people will go somewhere else.
Yeah, the fight for talent in tech is always tough.
It is. And then there's the whole transition to new technologies, like that EUV lithography, which is crucial for their 18A node. They need to make that happen smoothly.
We talked about EUV before. Why is this transition so hard?
EUV, it's really sophisticated, really expensive technology, special equipment, expertise. It's not just buying new machines. They have to learn a whole new manufacturing process.
Yeah.
And that means a steep learning curve, possible delays, setbacks.
So they're learning to fly a plane while they're still building it.
Exactly. And there's the financial risk, too. Billions of dollars poured into EUV. Those investments need to start making money, with successful products.
High stakes, for sure. But they seem ready to take the gamble.
They have to. The semiconductor industry, it's all about innovation. Fall behind and you become obsolete.
Okay, so external pressures, competitors, the chip shortage, internal challenges, managing change, keeping a positive work culture, attracting the best people.
It's complicated for sure. No easy answers.
Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive: financials, cost-cutting, innovations, partnerships, challenges, opportunities. Intel's at a turning point, that's clear.
They're making some really bold moves,
Odd.
trying to change the future of the semiconductor industry. It's going to be fascinating to watch how this all plays out in the next few years.
We'll be watching closely, that's for sure. All right, let's take a quick break, come back for the final part, and explore some of the bigger implications in all this. What does it all mean, really? Okay, we're back. Final part of our Intel deep dive. We've looked at the numbers, the deals, and now it's time to step back. See the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you look at what Intel's doing, it really reflects those big trends we're seeing across the whole tech world.
Hmm.
That push into AI with Lunar Lake, the AWS partnership.
Yeah.
It tells us something about how we think about computing even.
Yeah, it's not just about faster processors anymore, is it? It's like the whole idea of computing, it's changing right in front of us.
Exactly. And Intel, they're trying to be right there leading the way. Everything they're doing, the cost cutting, the new technologies, it all points to a future where AI and cloud computing, that's where it's at.
Makes you wonder, though, what does this mean for, the average person? How does all this semiconductor stuff actually affect our lives?
Well, think about it. AI is already everywhere, right? Personalized recommendations online, how doctors diagnose diseases, it's all influenced by AI. And as Intel, as other companies keep pushing the limits of AI chips, we're going to see even more AI in our daily lives, even more sophisticated, even more everywhere.
So maybe we'll have those super smart virtual assistants everyone's talking about, healthcare tailored just for you, self-driving cars that actually work. Sounds amazing, but maybe a little scary too, right?
True. AI developing so fast, it definitely raises some ethical questions, things we need to figure out as a society. But purely from a tech perspective, it's a pretty exciting time to be alive.
It is, yeah. Okay, so big picture, Intel's Q3, it was a mixed bag. Fighting for their spot, making tough calls, but also pushing ahead with some really cool innovations and partnerships.
Their success depends on how well they navigate this crazy, fast-changing world. But one thing's for sure, they're not afraid to take risks, to bet on the future.
And that's what makes this whole story so interesting, right? Even in a world of tech giants, there's still room for bold moves, big ambitions. Thanks for breaking it all down for us. It's been fascinating.
My pleasure.
And for our listeners, we've given you a lot to think about today. But remember, the learning never stops. Stay curious, keep exploring, and keep digging deeper into the stuff that's shaping our world. Being informed, it's more important than ever, and we're here to help you make sense of it all. Until next time, keep diving deep.